Joe Hopkins here, and like the title says, Autotune, it's not what you think. But, what is it? Well, let's start first with what you think. It is not a magic button that makes a bad vocal performance good, right? It just isn't. That's not what it does. People seem to think that. Yes, it's used on a lot of stuff. Pretty much everybody uses it, but the question is, how are they using it? What actually is it? And the fact that Autotune, although the first pitch correction software, and it's what we use the term to mean pitch correction software, it's pitch correction software, right? I have one called Melodyne on my computer. It came with my software. I learned how to use it, and there you have it. That's what I use. So Autotune's kind of like Coke. Not all soda is Coke, but we just call it Coke, right? So Autotune, pitch correction software, it isn't what you think it is. Like I said, it's not a magic button. It doesn't make bad singers good. That's just all there is to it. So let's talk about what it's actually used for. Let's start from the producer's standpoint. Now, I'm a producer. I have produced a lot of acts. Mind you, most of them have been rather amateurish or semi-professional that were doing demos or just recording something just for fun. I've gotten to work with a few professionals, and it's always a joy because, working with people who know what they're doing is great. But most small producers like me mostly work with small amateurish acts. So when I found out I had pitch correction software on my computer, it came with the software. A version of it did. I was thrilled. I'm like, okay, so maybe I can doctor these people up a little bit. And what I learned is if somebody gives a truly poor performance, pitch correction not only doesn't really fix it, it can make it worse. So the idea that these artists that are on the radio can't really sing is nonsense. But the thing is, nobody is a perfect singer. And for some reason, we've decided everything needs to be perfect. So what they do, right, what a producer does, because even with amateur acts, I want to make them sound as good as I can. I try not to overuse pitch correction software. But the whole point of it, to be used seamlessly to actually improve a performance in this way, is to get the best take you can, several best takes you can. I mean, ideally, you want the person to know the song, have practiced it somewhat, get them in the best environment with a good microphone on a good day when they're really, get them at their best, get them to give several takes of a good performance, and then you kind of put the best pieces of those takes together. Sometimes, some people can just give you a good performance. Like they do 3-4 takes and you just pick one, and there you go. But even with that, there are a lot of times a couple notes that sound a bit wonky or a little bit off, or they just can't seem to hit the one. They're a little sharp, a little flat, that kind of thing, where if they were doing it live, you wouldn't notice. But in the studio, everything is noticed. On recording, everything gets noticed. So you go into your pitch correction software and just kind of fix 1 or 2 notes, and not by a lot. If you really got to move that note really far, it's not going to really work that well. So what you're doing is you're taking a performer who is already on. They can sing the song, and these aren't mistakes you would notice if they were on stage. A lot of times. Maybe you would. Maybe you wouldn't. But if it's that big a pitch correction, it's going to be noticeable. And that's just all there is to it. For all the people complaining about Autotune, the best it's used on a lot of tracks, when it's used properly, you don't know they're using it. You wouldn't know because that's the point, right? And some people do overuse it. But most producers are just doing that. They're fixing 1 or 2 little things. And keep in mind, it's usually, most of the time when it's used this way, is the decision of the producer. So a lot of times the artist singing it, that you don't need to give them a bunch of flack. A lot of times it wasn't their choice. They performed it and the producer is producing it. And these are production choices. All right, so let's take a look at it from the standpoint of the artist. because I do record my own music, but more importantly, I've done music with other people where I'm performing on something and it's being produced by somebody else. And in those cases, a lot of times what gets pitch corrected isn't up to me, right? Not really my decision as the artist. But when I do have a say in it, a lot of times as an artist, you don't mind. It's not really that big a deal. Now, as far as everything being pitch corrected to death and everything having to be perfect, but that goes along with modern music where everything is time aligned, everything is super produced, and that seems to be what people want. They want perfection because these a lot of times are the songs that are reaching the tops of the charts. So obviously people like them. But the biggest complaints from people seem to be about like the heavy use of autotune, like T-Pain. And they say, oh, he can't sing. T-Pain can sing. He can sing just fine. He's proven it more than enough times. The thing is, in that case, it's a stylistic choice. This is an effect, right? Like you would use a talk box or a vocoder or even like distortion or reverb. It's an effect, and it's used as an effect as a stylistic choice. It's not really to improve his vocals. Improving the vocal performance isn't the point here. It's to give it a certain sound. You know what I mean? It's an effect, and some people like it. And personally, I think it works in some cases. And a lot of times people just use it to death because it's the popular thing, right? We all know the Cher song, Believe, was the first one where she just put autotune on it, cranked it up to 11 to see how it would sound, and it sounded cool. I thought it was cool at the time. And we all know Cher can sing. I mean, come on. She was singing songs perfectly fine for 30 years before autotune. She's an excellent singer. And it was a cool effect. It did sound cool, right? Nobody gave Stevie Wonder shit for using a talk box, right? Or a vocoder. Come on, it's an effect. But that's from the artist's standpoint. It either isn't much your choice or you're using it as an effect, that kind of thing. But I can tell you, producing myself, doing my own stuff, personally as the artist and producer, it is easier to just get better at singing in the long run than it is to use autotune or pitch correction all the time. And the reason why is it's a pain in the ass. It really is a pain to go into the pitch correction software and go through and pick out notes and fiddle with them and do all that work. It's so much easier to just sing it right. It really is. And so if you're producing yourself, it's kind of a good idea to actually try to get better at singing and to do as good a job as possible. It's easier to do 10 takes and pick the best one than it is to go and correct a bunch of stuff, in my opinion. Some people don't mind doing it. I'm not real big on over editing things. I just want to do it right and move on with my life, right? It's why I wish I had room to set up a drum kit. I go in there and I do a lot of MIDI drums and stuff, and then that's a lot of work. Whereas if you're a decent drummer, you can just play it and then you're done. But I digress, right? So these are things that autotune is used for, that pitch correction is used for, what it actually is. Because I notice people get really upset and they say that a lot of these people are faking it and they can't really sing. And no, they can sing. If they couldn't sing the song at least relatively well, pitch correction ain't gonna fix it, man. There's only so much that'll do. It's just for fixing small mistakes or as a stylistic choice. And of course, every one of us that gets pitch correction software decides to experiment with it. How badly can I sing something and fix it? And you find out real quick, not really. But unless you want it to sound warbly and weird and all screwball, which can be cool. I've done that too. It's kind of neat to just sing everything in a monotone and then put the notes where you want them. It's really kind of cool. I can tell you another thing too. Bad singers that own it, that just sing as if they're great, are easier to pitch correct than people that are actually trying to hit the notes and failing. It's that confidence in the voice. You can't you can't pitch correct confidence into something. If somebody isn't sure about the note, they sound like they're not sure about the note. So anyway, that's some things that Autotune is and Autotune isn't. I can tell you something else wonderful about Melodyne, and this is something awesome with pitch correction software nowadays. It used to be, it had to be single notes, like a vocal take, or you could do it with like keyboard notes or a guitar solo, but you couldn't play chords and play with it. But now they have this polyphonic detection system on Melodyne anyway, where I can play the guitar and it'll pick out the notes for each individual string, which is really kind of cool, because then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. You can do things with instruments that you couldn't do before, right? You can move those wherever you want it, but what's even cooler is you can bounce it to MIDI. And you could take an instrument track or a vocal track or something like that, bounce it to MIDI, and then turn it into a different instrument, which is really kind of cool. Partially because, take this for instance, you're not going to play the piano the same as you would a guitar. So you play the guitar part, bounce it to MIDI, and turn it into a piano, and it sounds like a piano, but it's not the way you'd play the piano. It sounds totally different. It can be cool. It really can. There's a lot of neat stuff you can do with that. That does take some work and some editing and to get it to sound right, but it's a really cool thing that you can do with Autotune or with Melodyne. I don't know if Autotune has that. So pitch correction, what is it? What isn't it? Well, it isn't what you think it is. It really isn't a magic button. It won't make a horrible performance great. It's just there to touch things up. And generally, people that use it as an effect, they're more or less abusing this thing, using it in a way it wasn't intended to be used. But now, because it sounds cool, it's become a thing. And believe me, there's nothing better than taking software that was intended for this use and pushing it to some other use, because you get some interesting effects. You get some interesting things, and that's always fun. In fact, if you can get a cheap or free version of some kind of pitch correction software, it's worth trying out. It's worth playing with. You'd be surprised what kind of sounds you can get. And it's really kind of neat. So you guys, I hope I've been somewhat informative. If you have questions, ask them in the comments section below there. And, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. I love you guys. Peace out, baby. Bye-bye.